What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with a special reaction. Indeed, we're going to react to a track from a soundtrack from one of my favorite animes. It's an older anime now. Came out very late 90s. It's called Trigun. Maybe some of you will know it. It came from a manga originally. I do have some of the English translation of the manga. It's interesting though, the story, manga and obviously by extension the anime, it was written by a guy. He's a Japanese citizen, but he is a Christian, so like, I don't know, it's written with like Western names, and they're like, there's a lot of like Christian like symbology and, you know, thematic exploration. One of the characters is sort of like this itinerant preacher, although he's also like a gun-wielding, like a gunslinger who protects, you know, vulnerable and innocent people and so on. So my understanding is actually the series wasn't crazy popular in Japan because, again, it was seen as like, you know, a lot of the names are hard to pronounce because they were like Western style names and you know, names popular in like English speaking cultures. And ultimately, again, you know, a lot of people in Japan are Shinto or Buddhist and so on, or, you know, some combination thereof. And so I think some of the religious themes just kind of, you know, fell on less than fully interested ears, so to speak. Not to say that there isn't, you know, Christianity in Japan, of course there is, but like I said, my understanding is that Trigun wasn't huge in Japan, but it was actually very popular in the US and some other places around the world. I certainly ended up seeing it because my brother had gotten the DVD box set of the anime, and he let me watch it, and I was really intrigued by it. And there's a lot of exploration about, you know, what is good and right, and, you know, compelling someone to behave correctly. Does that, you know, does that make the action ethical at all? It, you know, sort of like Clockwork Orange and some other works of fiction have explored some of these territories in terms of good and evil and what that means in different contexts. And ultimately, the main character tries as much as possible to resolve situations without using violence, despite the fact that he seems to be the very best gunslinger of all, and seemingly is like superhuman in terms of what he can endure and how he can sort of manage to get out of situations where people, you know, normal people would surely die. Now eventually you learn he's not a normal human, and that's partly why he is how he is. Maybe not the way he is, but how he is. But bottom line, yeah, it's a really interesting story, a really interesting lead character and other characters, and again, there's a lot of like philosophy / religious musing on, you know, good and evil and violence and peace and sort of you know, what is ethical in different situations. You know, there's like literally there's parts where you know, thought experiments are like, oh, well, you know, there's a spider about to eat a butterfly, like, do you stop the spider? And one person's like, sure, of course, because I don't want, you know, the butterfly to get eaten. It's like, well, if you do that, then eventually the spider's going to die, it's going to starve, like, it has to eat. And, you know, you're ultimately playing favorites in a system that, you know, is not up for you to decide what is good and right, when, you know, that's part of the nature of the spider to predate on butterflies and other things. So yeah, it really does explore a lot of themes. Now the soundtrack is brilliant, and it's brilliant for a number of reasons. One, so many of the tunes just fit the moments in which they're used right, and, you know, it's a long show. Like a lot of old school anime, it's like, I think it's like 29 episodes, 27 episodes. I forget what the standard is. Like, you know, back in the like 80s and 90s, there was sort of like, I think it's like 27 episodes. Like, that was the sort of expected run of any, you know, popular anime worth its salt or whatever. So I think it's, again, about like 27, 29 episodes, something like that. And, you know, over time, different themes are used again and again in certain circumstances, whether it's an emotional scene or like an action scene, whatever. And a lot of the soundtrack fits with the environment. Now the story, just as quickly as possible, it's set on these like barren moons, like this barren moon where like you find out much later in the story that like survivors of this deliberately what's the word, like sabotaged space like seeding program where, like, you know, humans in like cryogenic sleep were going to be sent to different parts of the like solar system, like the galaxy, to, you know, seed new civilizations in these different places. But only like one ship survives because, long story, you know, someone sabotages it, and that's part of like the main like running theme of the show. Anyway, it's like this barren, like really dry, like almost like American Southwest frontier sort of environment. So a lot of the tracks have this kind of like, you know, dusty road, like, you know, small dusty village, you know, in a desert sort of setting kind of feel. But obviously, you know, some of the tracks, again, that are more emotional, they'll have like a light piano kind of theme. And again, there's a lot of diversity over the course of the score. But as far as I can tell, the soundtrack, I should say, I think it's technically referred to as a soundtrack, although some pieces are definitely score. It's done by this progressive jazz group, Tipographica. So they're a Japanese progressive jazz, free jazz ensemble founded in '86. It looks like their last release was '97. Although there's a promo that I guess came out in '09, but I don't know if that's based on old, it's reissues. Yeah, okay. So basically their last like new material was '97. So they haven't been around for a while. And indeed, the Trigun came out in '98. Oh, right here, it says disbanded in '98. So right around the time the anime came out, they were ceasing to be a group. But yeah, the point is, the person who's given credit for doing the soundtrack to Trigun is called Tsuneo Imahori, or Imahori Tsuneo-san. And he is the guitarist for Tipographica. So the tune we're going to listen to from the soundtrack is called Permanent Vacation. It's played in this scene where they're like in this diner that's been taken over by some of the villains in the piece, and you know, it's way too long to explain in detail. But one of the guys plays a saxophone, one of the villains, and so I don't know if it's supposed to be him playing or if it's just kind of playing a tune with a saxophone to kind of give you the like atmosphere. But bottom line, it's a song or track that plays in like a bar scene, and it has a crazy saxophone line, and it's played by Natuyoshi Kikuchi, or Kikuchi Noriyoshi-san, who was the saxophonist for Tipographica. So again, this soundtrack, which I never knew back in the day, I don't have the disc anymore. I have it ripped to my computer, so I can't like show you the artwork. I do apologize. But I didn't know when I had this album back, you know, after I saw the anime and I really enjoyed it, and I, you know, looked around online, found a copy of the soundtrack. I didn't know at the time that it was done by essentially like this jazz prog rock group from Japan. I thought it might have been, you know, like they brought in like a composer, someone who had worked on, you know, doing scores for other animes. But it seems like they basically, you know, gave this jazz group carte blanche to like, hey, you know, make a soundtrack for this anime that we're making based on a manga. So anyway, with all that set up, I do apologize, but this is some of the best sax work I've heard. I mean, I've heard a lot of jazz with sax of different types and so on, but this jazz playing is not only epic and wicked, but it's really, it seems, you know, difficult to play in some respects. Now, never having played a brass instrument, I can't really speak to that on a detailed level, but I don't think this is like introductory playing. I don't think this is something that you give someone who's just starting to learn how to play the sax. I think this is more expert level material. So in any case, let's give a shout out to Natuyoshi Kikuchi and again Tsuneo Imahori of Tipographica, but this is from the Trigun soundtrack Permanent Vacation, 1998. next one. But yeah, there's a few tunes on the soundtrack with the saxophone playing. Again, what's his name? Sorry, Natuyoshi Kikuchi. So yeah, that one I do think is the most standout sax piece on the soundtrack, even if again it does appear on a few different tracks. So yeah, shout out to Tipographica. It makes me realize or think that, you know, maybe I need to take a close look at their catalog. As far as I can tell, they have, is it 4? Is it 3 or 4? Yeah, 4 albums, starting with the self-titled in 1993, Tipographica, then The Man Who Does Not Nod, 95, God Says I Can't Dance, 96, and finally Floating Opera in 97. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to take a closer look at them because, you know, now that I realize this soundtrack, which I love very much, is sort of, you know, a product of their style and their, you know, instrumentation and skill, it makes me think I need to hear more. So yeah, let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you know Trigun, you know, either, you know, whether you're interested in the story or whether you do know the soundtrack, or at least, you know, you remember the music from the series. I think for a lot of people who've seen it, you know, the music will stand out. It's used very effectively in the show. And again, it's a rare case, or not again, but it's a rare case where the English dub is just about on the same level as the original Japanese. Usually the original Japanese voice acting is notably superior. I think over time, you know, as the years and decades have rolled on, I think English, you know, distribution companies have paid greater attention to actually like hiring legit actors to do like quality voice performances. You know, I think like Princess Mononoke, maybe even the Death Note anime, which it was done in Canada for the English dub. But I think like early 2000s is when, you know, studios here who were getting the material and, you know, allowed to distribute it, I think they started taking more seriously English dub voice acting. But this Trigun is a case where even just before the millennium, it's very well done. The English dub is excellent. So anyway, let me know if you do know the show. Let me know if you're familiar with the soundtrack, or let me know if you're actually familiar with Tipographica. As I said, I definitely think I need to listen to some more. So yeah, let me know what you think. Other than that, I will see you next time. Peace.